All right, welcome everybody to the third and final segment of the New York State Hemp Extract Bill Workshop. We're here again with Jason Klimek of Boil and Code, also a board member of New York HempLab, and Kalen Cassiter of the Cassiter Cannabis Group and NYC GPA. He's also a member of HempLab. We're here again just to start to finish this digestion of the proposed hemp extract bill. We're going through the last segment, which starts with what it means to be a New York hemp product, and we'll continue on from there. Kalen's got to jump off just a little bit before 1 o'clock today because there's some big moves with regards to the governor announcing his plans for legalization. If you were here in the beginning of the call, we were also talking about the excitement around what's going on a federal level with the changes we're seeing that just happened in Georgia. So a lot happening, which leads us to believe there'll be a lot more good conversation in the very near future. Want to give a big shout out to our sponsoring member, Harris Beach Law Firm, based up here in Rochester, New York. We wouldn't be here without you guys, and on all the members who are on the call, from individuals to businesses. Y'all are helping keep the lights on and keeping this Zoom call rolling. We really, really appreciate it and love doing this, honestly. So thank you so much. So welcome everybody. I'm going to share my screen and let's jump in. And so just a reminder, folks, please feel free to drop questions in the chat, drop questions in the Q&A. We had some really good kind of back and forth the past couple workshops based off the questions that came from the audience. So we really welcome it. It's what makes, I think, this a rich experience for all of us. So without further ado, section 1005.13, New York hemp product.
Can't see the screen.
Oh, okay, great. Let me, I tried to do the full screen here, and apparently it doesn't want me to do that. So let me just exit out of full screen and then jump back in. All right, great. Should be ready. Let me try that share screen again. And how about that?
Still black.
It's black? All right. Any of you, Jason or Kalen, are you guys able to bring up the document itself? We'd be on page 44. I'm going to try to keep tweaking the background. Appreciate everyone's patience here. We're almost a year into online onto Zoom, and we still got some things coming up. Either of you guys able to bring it up by chance?
I'm looking for it now.
Cool.
All right, what did you say? 42?
44.
44. All right. Yeah, let me show my screen.
Okay, great.
Can you see it?
Yep, we can see that, and then scroll down a little bit, and we'll be.
Okay, hold on. Let me put it in my other screen.
Yeah, I wonder what's up with that. See a few more people jumped on since we got started. Welcome everybody. We were just dealing with a couple technical difficulties here, but we are just about to jump back on board.
Is it sharing the regs?
Yep, yeah, we can see that. And yeah, so I see you're on 42. So yeah, we got to drop down to a couple pages, but then we are good to go.
Gotcha.
Yeah, great. All right, cool. Can you zoom in a couple clicks? And then we should be good. Yeah, great.
Or 25.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
Okay.
And I'm happy to take from here if you don't mind being supporting with the scroll as we move forward. So.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And Tom, I see your question there. We'll jump into that in a little bit. We just want to, we'll get this rolling, but thank you for leaving it in the Q&A. All right, so New York hemp product. A, the department may establish standards and requirements above and beyond those established in this part and use such standards and requirements to certify products as New York hemp product. New York hemp product is a cannabinoid hemp product exclusively grown in New York State and processed in New York State by processors licensed under this part who demonstrate compliance with all requirements enumerated by this department. The department may revoke cannabinoid hemp product status as certified New York hemp product without a hearing. If it has reason to believe that such product no longer meets one or more of the standards or requirements established by the department. No cannabinoid hemp product sold in New York State may use the term New York hemp product or hold itself out as being a New York hemp product or approved or certified by the department in any way unless such a product has been certified by the department pursuant to this part. Can you scroll down a little bit for me, Caleb?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. To the section, in which case the cannabinoid hemp processor and cannabinoid hemp retailer may portray such product as being certified. Let me take it up from the top. No cannabinoid hemp product sold in New York State may use the term New York hemp product or hold itself out as being a New York hemp product or approved or certified by the department anyway, unless such product has been certified by the department pursuant to this section. In which case the cannabinoid hemp processor and hemp retailer may portray such products as being certified New York hemp product. Violation of this subdivision constitutes the ground for suspension or revocation of a license. Now, go ahead, Jason.
I was going to say, from my nerdy constitutional law perspective, this portion is pretty interesting to me, because when we saw kind of early drafts or early thoughts of the hemp bill, it was, hey, we're going to kind of make it hard for any out-of-state entities to come into New York. And obviously that completely violates the Commerce Clause. You can't tax them differently. You can't prohibit out-of-state retailers, that kind of thing. So this was New York's way of saying, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it constitutionally. And we're going to raise these barriers up that are just saying we're going to have very, very strictly regulated products that just happen to be some of the most strictly regulated in the country. And if you want to sell into New York, you got to meet these regulations. So this was New York's way around the Commerce Clause issue. So I think it will absolutely help benefit in-state hemp producers, retailers, things like that. But it also does come with it a higher regulatory burden on the in-state people as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, is there anything in this language that would prohibit a company from portraying itself as a New York business, but not necessarily a New York hemp or not a New York product?
So are you on the prohibition, or are you talking about the New York hemp product here?
The New York hemp product. So let's say like someone starts a company and they're not certified as a New York hemp product, but they are making claims similar to being like, made in New York. So the product, I imagine, is going to be a stamp of approval. It'll be like, you're organic or something like that. That is a differentiator.
Yeah, I think the best comparison would be if you see grown and certified, New York grown and certified on products. It's like, that's like for like New York produce and stuff like that. So in terms of the question on, so where's the definition? So that's going to, did it lay out the exact definition?
I think it did up at so that's on part B. It says New York hemp product is a cannabinoid hemp product exclusively grown in New York State and is processed in New York State by processors licensed under this part who demonstrate compliance with all requirements enumerated by the department. Yeah,
so no, the definition will be then released by the department in terms of what it is. When you say like how and who determines that, the Department of Health.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just responding to that question in the chat.
Yeah, great. Appreciate it. All right. And then if you could scroll down just a little bit more for me, Kalen, appreciate it. This teamwork makes the dream work, folks.
Yeah, right.
All right. So general prohibition, section 1005.14. A, no licensee shall engage in any activity relating to the processing, packaging, labeling, manufacturing, extracting, distributing, selling, or laboratory testing of cannabinoid hemp extract or cannabinoid hemp that does not comply with requirements Article 33B of the Public Health Law or this part. B, No person shall extract hemp extract or manufacture cannabinoid hemp products in New York State unless licensed to engage in such activity by the department or otherwise authorized by the United States Food and Drug Administration. So is that, if I'm reading that, that means that someone doesn't necessarily have to be registered through the New York State program if they're registered through a federal organization, or specifically the FDA? Is there room in there for an entity not to be registered but still manufacturing or producing in New York State?
I guess if the FDA were to start, so right now as it stands, the only room would be like, let's say Pfizer or Moderna, right? Both two New York pharmaceutical companies were to get authorization to sell a approved drug, that this, that they could extract and manufacture what could be defined as a cannabinoid hemp product. But moving forward, it opens the door to allow the FDA to regulate dietary supplements and essentially assert the power. But New York wouldn't have a power to regulate that anyway. So over the FDA. So
okay, great. There's a question: does the FDA have a certification for CBD now?
Yeah, that's Epidiolex. That's the only FDA approved medication that contains a actual cannabinoid, not synthetic. And that whole thing, it caused the whole issue with FDA, because now Epidiolex, or CBD, is an active ingredient in FDA pharmaceutical, which then brings in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and that created the whole oversight mess. So, yep, that's exactly what happened.
Jason, will you pick up the next line? There's someone knocking heavy on my door, and I gotta.
Yeah, are we on B or C?
We are actually going down to, yeah, I think we are on
next page.
On B.
On B. Okay. No person shall extract. Oh no, we just did B.
Yeah, I think we're on the next page.
I think we're C. Hemp extract shall be manufactured in cannabinoid hemp product before being offered for retail sale and shall not be distributed or sold directly to consumers within the state. So, yeah, can't sell directly to consumers, need that retail license. No cannabinoid hemp product shall be distributed or offered for retail sale in New York State unless it complies with the processing, packaging, labeling, and testing requirements of the sections we discussed last week, is sold by a cannabinoid hemp retailer licensed under this part. And that actually implicates one of the questions that's in the Q&A right now is, will out-of-state retailers selling into New York be required to get a license? You can't sell in New York at retail without a license. Even to transport it into New York, you have to get a permit, sort of like a license. So yeah, I mean, it's all regulated. You're not going to get outside of New York's rules because you're out of state. You still have to go through all the hoops that everybody else does.
And it does beg the question, the second part of that is including an operating agreement, because the state is requiring specifics. I don't remember off the top of my head, but when we went through what a retailer needs, there is certain parameters, including ownership, et cetera, that must be included in your application. So what do we do? What does an online out-of-state business do if they're trying to sell in New York State? And do they have to provide all that background?
Technically, yeah.
And sort of tangentially related to that point, with the defense bill that just was overridden, Congress overrode Trump's veto. There was it's called the Corporate Transparency Act, I think. There is now a federal law that goes into effect. The regs will come out in about a year, that makes you disclose the ownership, the beneficial ownership, meaning you poke through the shell companies till you get to a human, of all owners of a business. There's certain exceptions, but so New York was like one step ahead of the feds in this regard, but it's going to become federal law anyways, that you pretty much have to disclose everybody that's working or that owns a business.
Oh, interesting.
Good to know.
Okay, E. No person shall transport hemp extract within the state unless it is in a fully enclosed vehicle or container and accompanied by a manifest or proof of ownership documenting the name, physical address, lot or batch number, certificate of analysis, and license number of the originating licensed cultivator or processor, and the name and physical address of the recipient of the delivery when transporting between non-adjoining facilities.
Next, a little bit lower, Galen.
Let's see, 8F, right?
That's a good question. So we got a good question in the chat from Jennifer. Do you think there will be a distribution license given to existing license holders to handle out-of-state products? I think we're going to get to that in like the last part, which is like the temporary or alternative licenses. And also, if anyone's got any thoughts, we can talk about that right now too.
All right. So, can you scroll down a little bit?
Yeah, existing license holders. What do you mean by existing license holder, Jennifer? Like RPA, like research partner agreement? I think it's just going to be new. Whoever needs to get one can get one in terms of like a permit for distribution. A permit and a license is different too, because a permit presumably is easier to get, and it's it's less involved than a license.
And temporary by its nature. That's usually what a permit is.
Oh, no, you have a processing license now. So no, because the research partner agreement license, unless it's like a temporary license from the DOH. So everyone is going to have to reapply for their license come February or whenever they release the application, no matter what, no matter if you have a license, if you've been in the research partner program for years, no matter what.
Okay. Hemp extract shall not be shipped or transported in New York unless it is in a fully enclosed vehicle or container, accompanied by proof of origin with their hemp cultivation or processor license number or equivalent from the jurisdiction of origin, and accompanied by a certificate of analysis showing that the hemp extract has a total Delta-9 THC of no more than 0.3%. Also, if they're coming into New York, if you're an out-of-state person complying exactly with F3 there, you have to watch out for interstate transport unless Congress ups the limit. Because remember, USDA and FDA have all said, I mean, if you're a concentrate, you're probably going to be okay. But just remember with hemp, it's total THC, not Delta-9 for federal purposes. So just something to be aware of.
Yep, the total. Yep.
G. In no event shall any cannabinoid hemp product be smoked in any location in which smoking is prohibited under section 1399(0) of the public health law. So, no smoking. And we see this in the proposed cannabis bills too, is that it's banned wherever smoking is banned as well. And that includes if you like for living like apartments and things like that, in order to ban smoking on those premises, you have to have it completely smoke-free. You have to be registered on New York's smoke-free list or something like that for cannabis if you want to ban cannabis smoking, but you can ban areas without being on that list.
So if you allow for cigarette smoking and if you're a motel that allows for cigarette smoking, then you have to also allow for cannabis smoking.
No person shall distribute cannabinoid hemp products manufactured out of state to a cannabinoid hemp retailer within New York State unless permitted pursuant to 1005(18) of this part. So we'll get to that in a few.
Yeah, I think that goes back to Jen's question too. All right, yeah, if we could scroll down a little bit farther, Kalen, we can actually switch it over to Jason if we want, just because I know you will jump off eventually.
Okay, Jason, you have a pull up?
Yep, I got it up.
Yeah, if you want to just share, I think you could probably share over.
All right, let me see how I do this.
It's so strange mine didn't work.
Yeah, that was weird.
Okay, is that working?
Right. Yeah, great.
All right.
Okay, so section 1005.15 cannabinoid hemp processor prohibitions. So A, no cannabinoid hemp processor may transfer a license issued under this part without prior written approval of the department. B, no cannabinoid hemp processor shall manufacture a cannabinoid hemp product that is potentially hazardous food as defined by section 14-1.31 of this title. No cannabinoid hemp processor may conduct final product testing for licensee's own products to meet the testing requirements of section 1005.10 of this part. Nothing in this part prohibits a cannabinoid hemp processor from performing internal testing for research and product development or for quality assurance prior to final product testing by a third-party lab. D, no cannabinoid hemp processor may sell cannabinoid hemp products to consumer for final retail sale without first obtaining a cannabinoid hemp retail license. And E, no cannabinoid hemp processor shall sell hemp extract to anyone in New York State unless such person is licensed as a cannabinoid hemp processor under this part or registered as a registered organization under section 3365 of the public health law. So that's where we're beginning to see an intentional bridge into the medical market, correct, Galen?
Yes, in terms of the
registered organization. So
Yep.
basically a processor can't sell to anyone except for another processor, or like the hemp extract to anyone but a processor or an RO.
Or an RO, which is a medical marijuana registered organization. Yep.
And this is just putting it in regulation, but they were allowing ROs to purchase from hemp producers through some, I think, Department of Ag guidance earlier, but this is making it official.
Yep, exactly.
Zach, you want me to take this?
Yep.
All right. Cannabinoid hemp retailer prohibitions. No cannabinoid hemp retailer shall offer or sell cannabinoid hemp products in the form of an inhalable cannabinoid hemp product to anyone under 21 years of age. No cannabinoid hemp retailer shall sell a cannabinoid hemp product that is potentially hazardous food, as defined by section 14-131 of this title. Cannabinoid hemp retailers shall only offer and sell cannabinoid hemp products that meet all of the standards and requirements of sections 1005.8, 0.9, and 0.10 of this part. Cannabinoid hemp retailers shall not offer or sell any cannabinoid hemp product to be added to food or any other consumable products at the point of sale. So no selling like an extract plus a beverage that the consumer can add together so that you could get over those limits in the beverage of whatever it was, 20, 25 milligrams.
Penalties. Oh, go ahead.
What's that?
Oh, penalties. Yep. So section 1005.17 penalties. Licensees under this part shall comply with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations as it relates to such licensure. B, failure to comply with a requirement of Article 33B of the Public Health Law or this part may be punishable by a civil penalty as follows. 1, a fine up to $1,000 for a first violation. 2, a fine up to $5,000 for a second violation within 3 years, or 3, a fine up to $10,000 for a third violation of each subsequent violation thereafter within a 3-year period.
And I think this is important because before, when people would say, what happens if you violate it? Is there penalties? The answer was kind of, we don't really know, because there was nothing in the statute or regs at the time that said this exact type of thing. So, you had people selling things that were not legal, but the most that was going to happen was an inspector may come in and say, stop doing that. So it's important now to understand that there are, in fact, fines for violations.
C, so where a licensee willfully violates, refuses, or neglects to comply with one or more sections of this part, the department may limit, suspend, revoke, or annul a license after providing notice and an opportunity for a hearing to the licensee. However, license may be temporarily limited, suspended, revoked, or annulled without a hearing for a period not to exceed 30 days upon notice to the licensee, following a finding by the department that the public health, safety, or welfare is in imminent danger.
That's all constitutional law, by the way. You have a property right in licenses, so you have to have due process if they're going to take it away. They can't arbitrarily do things.
So D, a licensee who negligently violates this part 3 times in a 5-year period shall be ineligible to process or sell cannabinoid hemp for a period of 5 years beginning on the date of the 3rd violation. The department, for good cause shown, may choose to impose a lesser penalty. So it's curious to me that like all violations are weighed on the same. It's like you could have a mislabeled product on your shelf or sell something versus a processor could be selling raw hemp product extract, straight to market. And so there's like, to me, I read that everything's kind of on the same plane. And then maybe it comes back to that good moral character as to how much trouble you're going to actually be in or for how long.
Well, that's the last sentence there. The department, for good cause shown, may choose to impose a lesser penalty. It's very common in law where, the statute says if you don't do it by this date, you don't get the thing. And then, in a law office, it slips through the cracks and you blow the deadline. And then the attorney just submits something saying, sorry, that was our bad. Don't penalize the client for that. So same kind of thing is, if it was a true mistake your first time, they're probably not going to smack you with a lot of stuff. If you've been negligently doing it over and over again, they're going to probably take the full extent. So
Jason, do you think they have to fine you then if you violate? If they find any violations, do you think they're required to levy a fine?
So I think that, let's see. Well, it's may. So they have the discretion. If that was shall, then it would be a mandatory fine. So you can probably talk yourself down out of a fine. But it also depends on how heavy-handed they want to regulate. But that word may right there, that's what's controlling it. So they did leave themselves a little discretion.
Gotcha.
All right. Let's see. Cannabinoid hemp permits. The department may issue cannabinoid hemp permits expressly authorizing a permittee to conduct one or more of the following activities: distribute cannabinoid hemp products manufactured out of state to cannabinoid hemp retailers within the state, delivery of cannabinoid hemp products from a cannabinoid hemp retailer to consumers, retail sale of cannabinoid hemp products for a limited duration, continuation of operations for persons holding a valid CBD processor research partnership agreement with the Department of Ag and Markets pursuant to Article 29A of the Agriculture and Markets Law, any other activities as determined by the commissioner. So there's a lot within that permit allows you to do. I would say like one of the things is that number 3 here, maybe that's like a caterer license or permit, I should say, or something like that, where you're doing an event and you want it, but you're not a full-blown cannabinoid retailer. And also the continuation of the research partnership agreement. And the feds did push out, at least on the cultivation side, they allowed till September of 2021 for those research partnership agreements to continue. All right, so applicants for cannabinoid hemp permit must apply on a form prescribed by the department and submit a $100 application fee and permit fee as may be set by the department. I don't know if that's a $100 application fee and a $100 permit fee, or it's a $100 application and permit fee. So not really sure if that's $100 or $200.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Probably 100. They probably would have put the other 100 there, but
hopefully, since it is just a temporary kind of thing, that it would be 20% of the cost of the normal license. Permits issued pursuant to this section shall be valid for 1 year from the date of issuance unless prescribed for a shorter period of time.
I find this section really interesting because it's like it's not mentioned anywhere else until we get to like there might be 1 or 2 references, but then we get to here and it's like it's so like I'd say clear cut up into this point that this is what the licenses are. This is what they look like. It's retail manufacturing, processing, et cetera. And then we get to this point and it's like, oh, this kind of opens the door because now we actually talk about distribution or delivery. We talk about events, maybe not on-site consumption, but like maybe on-site consumption or on-site sales. Pop-up shops, like where you could go vend at, I mean, here's the question. Does one of these constitute for your farmer's market? And can you license your truck or as a place at, like underneath the license, and anywhere you are with your truck, you can use that license as if you were going to sell at a farmer's market or sell at events. And
good point.
I think there's a bunch of questions here that there's so much packed into this brief little like snippet that actually opens up a lot that isn't too clear to me. And I'm curious how to draw out more information from the state through our questions with this.
Well, I think one thing is if we look at it as, this is kind of maybe the blueprint template for adult use regs, I think that these become even more clear because I think the state is going to want, to have, something similar to a caterer's alcohol license where it's not a bar that is licensed, but you're maybe changing venues, that you have that for cannabis and like you said, farmers markets and things like that. So I think that can maybe shed a little light that if the state's looking prospectively, this is the type of stuff that they may want to put in there. And if they can already kind of get a test run on hemp and cannabinoid extracts, maybe it'll work a little better, or we'll have the kinks worked out by the time we get to adult use.
And I'm also curious too here, like for this, do you need your operating agreement? Do you need all, like what's the depth required for this permit? Especially if you're going to be an out of state, you're going to be a distributor for out of state products, like you could assume like major companies want to have their foot in the door for being a distributor in New York State. And so like again, it's almost like this section's downplayed a bit where I could see a lot of entity and interest to come in through this doorway where it's only $100 permit with not that much requiring, like not that much information required out of it. Like there's nothing there compared to all the other ones tell us exactly what we need to know when it comes to applying. And so I'm curious again, if that would get built out and the revisions of this.
Well, I don't even know if it's going to be in the revisions, but it's going to be more in like guidance, like on the website or like in some sort of guidance documents,
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily you're going to get more answers on that. What it does is it allows them to kind of have more flexibility in doing what they want to do.
No, that's great feedback.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Because like if you look now on, for any type of, like I do a lot of tax stuff with the state, if it's not in the statute or regs, they're not amending the regs every time. They're issuing these publications that are guidance from the Department of Tax saying, well, in this scenario, this is how we treat it and this is what you should do. So I very much imagine and hope, frankly, that the Department of Health will do the same thing as, hey, we've noticed that this is an issue. Here's what we say about this without having to go through a whole regulatory process.
Exactly.
I just want to speak to, there's one comment in the chat box by Alex. What are the label requirements? How do I need to present each product and label without being penalized? I think I can't remember what section that's in, but we covered that already.
I think it was like the first one.
Yeah, on the first
session.
Yeah, I can actually, I'll tell you what section it is. Give me one moment. So there's the administration, product requirements to be sold at retail, section 1005.8 of the regs. And I'm happy to send this proposed regs in a PDF form as a follow-up to everyone so you can digest it yourselves. But again, that's section 1005.8 will tell you everything you need to know about products moving forward. So yeah, do we have one more section after this that we were going to read?
This is just severability that just says if a court holds one part of this illegal, unconstitutional, whatever, they won't destroy the entire law. Incorporation by reference doesn't really matter. We don't have to discuss that, and that's it. So
yeah, that's what we had listed for our read through. We definitely wanted to open the rest of this workshop up to questions, and hopefully we have answers to them. There's one question I got emailed just recently, but I'm not sure if Dwayne's on this call right now, but he said, I learned recently that the language in the proposed regs would ban rechargeable vapor products. Would this include dispensable or disposable hemp vapor products? It's a bit confusing because it seems New York wants a one-time use product and not products that can be refilled or filled on the black market. That said, there are disposable devices on the market that are one-time use and cannot be refilled. However, some have a charge port on them for emergency purposes in the event that the battery dies and there's still product remaining, the disposable atomizer. I don't understand why these disposables that also have a charging port would also be banned since they're one-time use products. Do we have any insight on that? And I can't remember what section that is under, but I remember that bringing up kind of, it wasn't clear to me if they were banning, what constitutes as a rechargeable. If you're selling a vape cart versus selling a battery, do you have to sell them separately? Like you can sell the standard battery in its own, but then like what we're actually selling as a vape product is just the cartridge, or does it have to be like a pod insert for like your packs, thing, or like how refined do we imagine that to be on the market?
So all that should be allowed. What just won't be allowed, I guess, is what he's saying is if you have a single-use product that can also be recharged. So single use would just be like all in, just a pen with, and you can't add you can't add oil to that or anything like that. I don't know why they say single use that cannot be recharged. I don't know. Maybe they're defining single use by saying can't be recharged.
Yeah. Possibly. Yeah. And then again, so maybe it's not, I'd imagine they don't want to ban selling a battery that can last a long time. Whereas like what they want to do is not sell something that is, it's like, is the battery part of it, or is that a value add, when we're talking about the product that is being sold? So again, like selling a cartridge, can you sell the cartridge and the battery, or does the battery have to sell?
So it says it could be a closed system with a pre-filled disposable cartridge that attaches to a rechargeable battery, or a single-use product that cannot be recharged.
Yeah, great. Thank you for finding that. So there's a question in the Q&A saying, can hemp concentrates be sold? So hash, rosin, just raw extract, etc.
Well, look at the definition of hemp extract. All derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts of isomers derived from hemp and used for human consumption. So wherever it says hemp extract can be sold in New York, that would include everything within that definition. So they would have to explicitly.
They would require for that. Like, are we gonna be able to? I'm just gonna like let my tongue be loose. Like, can we sell dabs? And if so, under what packaging would constitute the sale to be allowed direct to consumer? And obviously, we know that first and foremost, it would have to be broad spectrum or at least some kind of refined, because a lot of the hemp extract, it's going to be at 3% THC, something of that nature. So it would have to be refined. But yeah, can you sell it in a closed jar, a child-proof jar that is essentially like a dab or a rosin or a hash that's been remediated of its THC? And I didn't see anything that explicitly said no, but I don't say anything that's crystal clear on a yes either.
I mean, I don't see anything that says no. And because they broadly define hemp extract as basically anything derived from a cannabis plant with less than 0.3% delta 9, then unless they specifically call out in the regs and say, you can sell hemp extract except these things, then those things are by default able to be sold.
Yeah, I think that one deserves another pass, at least in my own mind, just to be clear, because there is a huge market for extra. And we were talking about like RSO, the Rick Simpson oil, where people are, buying bioavailable resin, whether it's CBD or THC. So meaning it's dropped the acid, so it's CBD or THC in the medical market. So there's limited, in most cases, there's no like CBDA in it. So when you eat it, it will be able to be taken through your digestive system. And that's there's a lot of people consuming that who are like overlapping between the medical and recreational markets. And there's nothing explicitly saying that you can't sell one of the what I'll call is like a syringe, a pretty like it doesn't look, it's not like a needle syringe, but a wider syringe that you can use that to have exact measurements when it comes to eating the product. If you don't want to take a tincture or etc. You could also use it for dabbing as well. But yeah, it's not crystal clear there, and I'm curious if it will cause kind of some more like gray market movement and then some retaliation by the government, like in response to, or if it'll be identified early on. So we got another question by Tom. Will the OCM take this over and push dates? Can they really create these rules and have responsibility pulled weeks later? Did OCM have input on these regs? So OCM has not been established yet, but they've been preparing for it. And the idea, as we talked about last workshop and the workshop before, that it would be of benefit for the governor's office to push out this bill to be incorporated under the wing of the OCM, which we'll see what the governor's office would hope for that to happen by April 1st, which would be the budget, the day the budget is released. So we're going to see this kind of like window where there's comment periods is January 11th. There's probably going to be by like the government will.
Zach, I gotta go.
Okay, great. Hey, thank you so much, Kalen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everybody.
The governor's office will probably have at least a month-long window of responses. So let's just say end of January, early February is when the responses to all of the comments will be released. And then as I understand it, there'll be another 45-day window where there's revisions, edits before the next, like the proposed final bill. And there won't be another comment period, but you line up those dates, it puts us almost at April 1st. And in theory, we could see it happening where they delay even pushing the regs out until April 1st to see whether or not it's something to be incorporated under the OCM. And that's just kind of a timeline I'm looking at or assuming that the governor's office would push for, because it'd be beneficial and kind of easier to manage. Great. Got another question coming in through. If I use whole plant infusions in any of my products via extraction from a processor, will I need a processing license in addition to a manufacturing license? Also, I know it's probably been touched on, but how will selling shipping out of state work? All right, that's a great question. So whole plant infusion, I have two thoughts to this. My like legal brain says like it's not allowed unless you have a processing license. That being said, I know, for example, Caitlin is, let's just say, interested in making some topical products. And to be able to do that under a manufacturing license, like, do you actually need to get you don't need the product to go through a CO2 extractor to have the whole plant value in your topical. But the way the law is written, that only processors can extract and the manufacturers can make with that extraction product.
Yeah, let me just interject too that we can always go back to the definitions. Manufacture means to prepare, treat, modify, compound, press, package, or otherwise manipulate hemp or hemp extract into a cannabis hemp product. So what you're talking about is absolutely going to require a manufacturer license. It's right there.
What is great though, because I do think that when you just reread that, it does prove and provide the space for hemp, like the flower or the extract. So I think under the definition, it does allow for like if you were extracting through coconut oil or, kind of low, there's specific like high pressure closed loop systems that are for extraction. And if I'm not mistaken, there's it's not a loophole, but a window into more subtler forms of processing. I think as long as it's not going for human consumption. And that's something I think we need to, like, if Kalen was on here, I think you'd have a little bit of perspective as well, but we can definitely follow up on that.
Well, the human consumption is definitely key because hemp extract does not include any food ingredient, or food additive that is generally recognized as safe, or any extract derived from hemp that is not used for human consumption. So that is explicitly not hemp extract, meaning if you weren't using it for human consumption, and then you look at the definition of manufacturer, which includes hemp extract, that would say if you're manufacturing something with hemp that is not included for human consumption, then you may not need a manufacturer license, because it's, although you do, if you're doing the raw hemp, you would still need some type of license because you can't possess raw hemp without a license.
And I think like part two of the question, how will selling and shipping out of state work? Which is interesting. There's nothing that's guiding that besides if you are also selling in state, you're going to need a retail license.
Well, what you have to do is comply with whatever state laws you're selling into and the federal law. So you have 3 laws. You have New York. If you're a New York processor, let's say, or manufacturer, you have New York law, you have the federal law, and you have the whatever state it's going into law. And so that's what you have to do. And remember, again, the difference in the THC levels, depending on what kind of thing you're manufacturing, but that's something that you have to always pay attention to. In New York, also recall, but they do restrict it. New York allows manufacturers to sell between themselves products up to 3% THC, and it does specifically say intra-state, within the state. But just keep that in mind that you cross a state border with that, that's federal crime.
Yep, great. Caitlin, we'll get back to your question in a moment. I do want to say that Alex in the chat, am I able to order my products from out of state to resell them based in New York? As long as they adhere to all the New York standards and you have what we saw as that temporary license that will allow you to import and then redistribute. So you'll need a retail license for New York State, and you'll need the temporary permit, let's just call it, that would allow you to be an import and a distributor of out-of-state products, and then you are liable for all those products. So hopefully that answers your question there. So are there any restrictions for solventless extraction under the new processing license? I did not see anything there. And I think this conversation I had with folks with regards to the difference between processing license and a manufacturing license is there a window for solventless extraction to be like, for example, a rosin press or bubble hash? Could you use, is that manufacturing or is that processing? And that's where we go back to definitions, et cetera. And I think a lot of it will also come back down to cannabinoid content. So, if we're just using rosin press as an example, that it's high pressure heat that pushes the resin out of the bud. My only concern with that process was, is it going to heat up the Delta 9? Is it going to heat up THCA into Delta 9 through that process? And will your product be compliant downstream? So just, I did not see anything that restricted solventless extractions, but I do know from processors, all extraction processes must be permitted, or at least the state must be notified of those processes in advance.
And you're still going to have a license.
And you're going to have a license. Yep. All right. So another question is, what about pet CBD products?
For this one, New York doesn't really, oddly, address it because everything is for human consumption. So under New York law, it's not that big of an issue, but you do have to worry about the federal law because FDA absolutely considers something that is ingested by animals to fall under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So you still have the specter of FDA regulation kind of hanging out there. So, if you make claims, which you can't do for New York purposes, but you potentially could if you were talking about animals, FDA can still come in and say, nope, you can't do that. It doesn't matter that New York says you can, we say you can't, and supremacy clause wins.
All right, great question. I'm going to jump over to the chat real quick. Dean, as a small grower under 1,000 plants, and because they can't find an extractor in New York State to extract from them, they've chosen to go with with a Vermont extractor. And so the question is, will the Vermont extractor have to abide by New York laws for me to bring back my products into New York State? And the answer is yes. Everything is going to have to, all hemp products in New York State are going to have to abide by New York State hemp standards. And that's where there's the issue where, like, Colorado is different, Vermont's different. Every state has different standards, and New York is setting the bar the highest, which great for consumers, challenging from production process and importing out-of-state products.
And we know that this has been upheld constitutional by the Supreme Court because other states have highly regulated their products. I think there's Wisconsin with cheese or something like that. And there's other states that have said, we're setting our standard very high for the exact same reasons New York did in this, is to kind of help their own residential businesses. But we know that that's perfectly constitutional. And yes, anything sold in New York, sold into New York, has to meet those New York standards.
Mm-hmm. So then, Caitlin, to follow back up on your question, let's see if we can answer this live. So if I'm selling my own products and I already have a manufacturer license, will I have to get a retail license as well? If you are selling to consumers in New York State, you will need a retail license. So yeah, hopefully that answers that for you.
They explicitly say manufacturers and processors can't sell to retail consumers unless they have a license.
So then back to Jennifer, do you think they will send letters directly to storefronts to remove non-New York compliant hemp being sold on the shelves? I would go so far as to say, how the hell are they going to know who to sell these for? Like, what constitutes as a store? Are they going to send a letter to every single gas station in New York State, let alone like anyone that has on their website? If you put it in Google, on Google Maps, and you type CBD in, I think that there's a headache worth of notification that's going to be required in advance. I imagine the next year is going to be quite troublesome from a regulatory perspective. And this summer, when there was the DOH partnered with Cornell, partnered with Ag and Markets for a presentation about transferring into the USDA program, as well as the Department of Health monitoring and regulating the extracts. The director or the spokesperson from the Department of Health said they imagine the first year is going to be about education. The second year or change is going to be about so first year is education, second year is about warnings, and then third year is going to be about implementation and enforcement. Because of how much overhead and how new this is and how infant it is even for the Department of Health, let alone the retailers, if you include language barriers, cultural barrier, if you look at the whole mess that is legalization and rolling out these proposed regulations, it's going to take a lot of time to bring everyone onto the same page. Because what if someone never got this letter to remove something from the storefront, but then they get $1,000 fine by a violation fee, number one, out of the blue. So it's what is the parameters to start? One, you got to get everyone registered, which how long is that going to take for everyone in New York State to even know that there's going to be registration? Do you send every business a letter? Do you send everyone who sells tobacco or alcohol letters? How do you even find who the retailers are to notify them in advance before there's an implementation and enforcement process?
On that point, New York can literally put it on a web page, and they don't even have to. Frankly, they can pass a law, and ignorance is not a defense. So they don't actually have to tell you because it's public. All laws are public. So if you are engaged in a business, it is incumbent upon you to know the laws, and therefore they just publish the laws and you're liable for violating it. Now, they probably will send out notices. Well, I doubt they'll send out notices. What they'll do is they'll make announcements on the public health department. Maybe they'll run a commercial, doubt it. But that's it. I mean, they have no obligation to notify people that you're doing something illegal. When they pass a new law, there's just literally no obligation to do that. So when we see the transition, it will just be, by what do we say, April, that you have to be compliant. And if you're not, then they can come fine you. If you had a license, if you applied for a license, but you weren't compliant, they can fine you and pull your license if they want. So it's really incumbent upon everybody operating a business to be compliant with the laws, talk to a lawyer, be reading the regulations. It is what it is. It's just how the law works, that it's just automatic.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about on one of the previous calls is, and also having conversations with directors from the NYC GPA, that they imagine that there's going to be a window to sell inventory. If someone like you're not going to just be banned. Like there's going to be a winding down period where if you have inventory on the shelf, like they're not going to make you throw it out, but it may say, okay, you by June 1st, you have to be selling only compliant product, but you need to be registered by April 1st. So there's a window for people to be able to get rid of their non-compliant product, let's say.
And my guess is if you're registered as a license holder, then there's probably more avenues of communication there, because now New York State has you in a database. And so if they want to notify all retailers, hey, this is changing, they can just notify the database and make their lives a lot easier.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, great questions, everybody. Hopefully we're helping a bit. So Dean, our concern is because we are so small, it's hard to find a New York State extractor, and they do not seemingly cater to small growers, and it would surely be not financially feasible for us to get an extraction processor license that pushes us out of New York hemp industry. I think that is a big issue. I know that there are going to open the licensing process, which you may not want one, respectively so, from your business model perspective or your just professional interest. But I know there's a lot of people who've been waiting very patiently to open up their doors, or at least have access to apply for processing. And within that, I imagine there will be more small scale people opening up who want to do craft, want to do boutique. And many of them, let's say it costs $1 million to start a lab, a full-on lab. Unless you have a very successful brand, you're going to need to be doing other kind of tolling processing for other people to continue to generate the money and create the ROI on your business. So, and Jennifer in the chat says, I will cater to small grows for extracting. That's awesome. Jennifer, if you want to drop your email address in the, or reach out to Dean directly, whatever. I love that connection's happening. And yeah, there's not a ton. We featured a group recently that's called Bardo Labs. They're basically, they had the same issue. They couldn't get a processing license in New York State, and they set up shop in Pennsylvania, literally on the New York State border, and set up a boutique craft, an extraction facility. And they work with small groups, but yeah, I don't know of many besides that. And I love that Jennifer is down, because that's kind of what gets it going. There's also, I think, Open Mind Organics down in New York City area is also doing small scale extraction. They do ethanol. So I do know of a couple. I think there's also Empire, Empire CBD or Empire Hemp Company up in Batavia, New York, is doing smaller scale extraction and willing to work with groups. So they are out there, but it is a lot of the press is going to the bigger companies. And we also know it's not worth it for a small grower to one. It's a question of whether it's worth it for a small grower to do anything for biomass or extraction unless they have a brand and a following, because we know that really the opportunity is predominantly for flower, and then using secondary and tertiary flower harvest for your extraction. Sweet. Yeah, great. Yeah, great question, Dean. And hopefully this helps. And I do know the group, there's Jenny's group, she'll be compliant. We can follow up offline to talk more about that if and as needed, but I'm really glad there's connection happening out there. So yeah, any more questions? We got one in the Q&A. So what about CGMP certification? I work from a home kitchen for now, but wondering, let me answer this live. Wondering if I need to think about a commercial space sooner than later. Would I be able to rent space from a friend who has a CBD company and GMP certified space in the meantime? One thing that we need to look at in the fine print, and I'm going to speak off the cuff, there were in the past parameters prohibiting multi-use space for extraction. I don't know if the language is still the same, but in the research partner agreement, if I'm not mistaken, there was something prohibiting another business for renting out the space in the permitted facility for extraction. That may have changed, which would be valuable for small people. And there's CGMP, but there's 3 different forms of GMP that are outlined in this document. If we can go back to them, I think it's 111. So CFR Title 21, parts 101, 111, and 117, that begins to outline. So that's on section, let me see if I can copy that. So there are different levels of GMP certification required for different processes. If you want to make an extract for your tincture, that's under the supplement regulation, that's CGMP, that's the highest level of standards. Whereas if you want to make an edible, like if you want to be a manufacturing doing an edible, that's a lower tier GMP certification process that might require like an advanced commercial kitchen. You still need to be GMP certified and have like, it's all about paperwork, but the facility doesn't necessarily need to be the same facility as a supplement facility. So I think that's really important to notice, and that's going to require us to do some homework. And maybe a follow-up workshop that we could do for HempLab is looking at the different levels of GMP certification or the CFR code requirements, because that's what I think is going to open the door for more smaller processors such as yourself. And I do believe that partnership and rental is probably the best way to operate as a small business in the beginning, and or find a partnership of someone who you trust, that if you have your own recipes, you get a lawyer, you sign paperwork, non-compete, NDA, and protecting your interests, that you could have someone who has the license and infrastructure be doing the production process for you, or you could do it with them. And so that's not ideal. I know I like to keep things close to hand, but just know there's a couple different options there. Sweet. So as well as two license holder. I'm just reading Jenny's comments. I have a 12,000, I'm imagining, square foot building that's currently going under CGMP. If we can, I would love to open the space to other hemp companies. Yeah, honestly, I think for small businesses, like the future is more these collaborative work environments. I'm not going to go so far as to call them co-working, but cohabitating, or maybe it's not a full cooperative by any means, but looking at how to diversify space, drive down rental costs, as well as create proximity with regards to processing, packaging, distribution. That's all stuff that's going to help your business, and you as a small business owner have partners outside of your own business model that allow you to kind of accelerate moving forward. Because it's as a small business, I know how hard it is to do it all yourself. And at first we think we have to, but it is worth thinking about first question is, what is my skills? What do I want to focus on? And then second question is, who's in my network that I can partner with to leverage what I have at hand to accelerate my process. And that's all. We can talk about that stuff more later, but yeah, I think that's a big interest point for a lot of people.
And you will have to identify on a license application the licensed premises, whether you have a lease or own or something like that. And by definition, a home kitchen can't be CGMP certified. So you do need a commercial space for that type of thing.
Yep. But again, the cost of a commercial kitchen space that's GMP certified is way less than like a nutraceutical or a supplement facility or factory, so there is some leeway. And I know that the team from the NYC GPA really, that was one of their kind of like thumbs up, feeling good successes, because it was something they've been working on for years, to allow for small farms, small businesses to have access to production in-house without the extreme overhead of some of the like supplement factory requirements. Yeah, these are great questions, everybody. Yeah, feel free to ask away. I'm sure for myself, I learned the most through conversation. And even if you feel like you're the only, if you feel like you're a lone voice asking questions, we welcome them. This is the time and really why we're doing it. Yeah, so I mean, I'll take this time to say, if folks haven't already, the time is now for the comment period. Want to give a shout out to the NYC GPA, all the work they're doing in the background to really promote comments and legislation that is pro small business. I just dropped a link in the chat that goes to the NYC GPA comments in action, where if you're not sure what to say or you feel overwhelmed by all the points of reference, they've outlined their comments and create a pretty easy.
I included the attendees.
Thank you, Jason. I sent it just to Jason. Yeah, you can use that link as a reference. See what they're saying. You can copy and paste it yourself and put your own title at the top. It's really made for ease. And I think it's really valuable to see a comprehensive comment versus starting from scratch as an individual. So that's why we've been doing this, to like kind of give a full perspective of what's being proposed. But really it comes down to having a reference and a template like the NYC GPA is really valuable and honestly helps myself. So please check that out. Those were just posted, I think today, which is exciting. And they go section by section, and yeah, I think it's everything from pricing, et cetera, to criticism on the flower ban. Okay, got another question. Caitlin, can you touch on testimonials? Any advice on how we effectively educate people on the plant without making claims?
Don't. I mean, honestly, if you want the simplest answer and to not get fined, don't. Like, just, I know people want to, don't. That, as a lawyer, I'm saying don't do it, because you are making claims that are not scientifically supported and accepted by the medical communities. You can't do it. You can't. I mean, you can, but you risk getting fined, shut down, product confiscated, whatever it is. And I know a lot of people point to, but they're doing it. They're breaking the law too.
And I think it does come down to like there's medical claim that this helps my anxiety, this helps my insomnia, this helps my pain, versus like this product rocks. Love the brand, love how it feels. Like finding out how to create promotion that's not based off of symptoms. Yeah. So people like, this made me feel great. Like, or this, like,
I love the taste.
I love the taste. So finding a way to promote the quality of your product, not any symptom related like advertisement, is really, really essential. And there are some companies that are just doing whatever the hell they want, and I wouldn't recommend that either. I think it's safe is really, the safer, the better. And finding, if it comes to education, like, what about a YouTube channel where or like your Instagram live, where you can talk about topicals, you can talk about it maybe more fluidly. And FDA might not be, it's not something that's written and promoted, but more like there is a place for education, and it may be a separate handle on your Instagram page where you're playing the role of educator versus your brand lives another place and isn't doing the education or like claiming things. So I think there's ways to diversify, especially with all the outlets. But what it comes down to full circle is don't make any claims, because that's the safest way to operate. Topicals are between these regs and pets. I'm not sure. How do you interpret that?
Not really following it.
Tom, if you could reiterate your question, that would be really helpful.
I mean, topicals fall outside of human consumption, so it's not squarely addressed by a lot of the regulations. I have to go back through and remember exactly.
And I can't remember what the Cosmetic Act is, but a lot of the parameters fall back on the Cosmetic Act. And that's what allows a lot more flexibility with regards to labeling requirements, as well as input.
So I can tell you, like, because we've run into this on a trademark issue, is if you try to trademark a CBD product that is ingestible, you can't do it, because the trademark office is federal. They point to the FDA guidance and say, what you're doing is illegal under FDA rules. We do not trademark illegal things. However, if you have something that is topical and not ingested and not medicinal, they will allow the trademark to go through, because it falls outside of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And it's therefore legal, because you're not dealing with the whole Epidiolex illegality kind of thing. So, that's how topicals and such can get through and be legal, while still, falling under the framework of federal and state law.
Yep. Cool. So that's done there. Yeah, these are great questions, everyone. And again, this is what we've been, when we envisioned HempLab offering a service, this is how we've been trying to approach it. So love all the questions. There's no wrong questions here. And this is what we're trying to do to make sure we're all, if we can level the playing field through our minds, and it gives us a chance at least to be successful once and as the doors continue to blast open.
And let me just throw out there too, for human consumption in the definitions, New York regs define it as intended by the manufacturer or distributor to be used for human consumption for its cannabinoid content, or used in, on, or by the human body for its cannabinoid content. So if you have a topical and you're like, hey, it contains CBD, but it's really just a moisturizing lotion, probably okay. If you say, hey, it contains CBD and the CBD will help with whatever, then you probably just went back into human consumption. So it's going to be how you word things, and it's gonna produce a lot of guidance, because people are gonna run afoul of this accidentally all the time because they're just not used to the rules. So Department of Public Health, or if this all gets swept under OCM, look for their guidance. They are actually relatively easy to read. You don't need to be a lawyer to read their guidance. So look for their guidance. They will try to guide the public, because really at the end of the day, they're looking out for public safety. They're not trying to go after businesses. They want you to comply. It makes their lives easier.
Right. And then, sorry to ask so many questions. Is there any way I can reference more guidelines about topicals? Do I just assume to be safe and follow the rest of the CBD guidelines? I'm still confused and uncertain of what will be required on my labels. Yeah, great question. And I do think that, so we can dig up that link that Jason was referring to, the codes that are recommended for topical, and share that. And I think I'm not an expert in that place, so I won't pretend to speak to it as such. But I do think that there are the basic warning labels, the basic warnings on the that are outlined in this hemp regs that we're looking at, that I think can inform what you would put on your topicals to stay in integrity. And so, as a small business, it's pretty stressful to think about buying, 1,000 labels at a certain price point, knowing that their label requirements might change in 2 weeks or 4 months or 6 months, depending on what your volume is. So I would say do your diligence in these regulations, that it's crystal clear that you can say, like, not for use of, keep out of reach of children, include a list of all the material that's in there. You're going to need a barcode. It's best, I would consider a QR code, honestly. And, again, that comes back to like surface space, like when it comes to like what your label is and what your product is. But again, I'm happy to talk about that offline. And but those are big questions, and I actually don't know that answer. And I think that's something that we can definitely continue to look into. Yeah, Dean. So Dean's asking me to connect you with Jenny. So, because Jenny, I see you communicated that to us. Let me see if I can type that into Dean. So it's going to be, I'll just share, Jenny. Hopefully this is okay. I'm going to send this to everybody. Jenny at jennysbakedathome.com. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Lori. We appreciate everyone. We're past that time. Yeah, Jenny submitted that. Hopefully that work. I'm just going to put it again in there just to make sure it's copied and pasted. And then Jenny also offered a number, so that's all connecting there. So Dean, hopefully that'll help you. And thank you so much for being here. And yeah, thank you everybody. Jason, thank you so much for your time today and these past few workshops. It's been great. And yeah, everyone who supported us, just thank you so much. We really have been wanting to do this kind of stuff it's been a challenging year, but this makes it worth it. The feedback, the questions, the engagement. So yeah, really appreciate everyone's feedback and support, and keep an eye out. If you have any questions, follow up with us directly at the registration link. There's info@nyhemplab.org. If you have any recommendations or requests for future webinars or kind of workshops, we're all ears. We really want to support the community directly, and it's easier for you all to tell us what you want to hear than us to tell you what we think you need to hear. Again, big shout out to our supporting member, Harris Beach law firm, and big thanks to everyone. I see Steve Latier, Forefather CBD on here. There's a handful of small businesses, of individuals who have been supporting us since the beginning, and we're really grateful. And yeah, we will stay in touch. Take care and have a great day.